Hope everybody's warm and cozy tonight. Thanks for joining us. And I'm going to go ahead and get us going. So thanks again. So welcome. This is our webinar about winter emergency shelter and how to volunteer. I'm really happy to see everyone joining us tonight. My name is Laura Ellsworth, and I'm the Strategic Partnerships and Advocacy Manager with Council for the Homeless. And my pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm really happy to introduce you tonight to a wonderful panel of folks who are here to talk about what happens in Clark County during the winter months to provide expanded emergency shelter to folks, especially when we have snow and ice to contend with. And unlike the school kids who celebrate when the snow comes, looking forward to a day of play and no school, these amazing people jump into action and come together to provide warmth, hospitality, and care to our neighbors who are most in need of a safe, warm place to sleep. So I see a lot of new names in here tonight, and I have a few reminders for us as we get started. First, the only people that you can see and hear are the panelists and hosts. So if you have questions, feel free to post in the chat. I'll be able to periodically check on it as we go through the night. So please be patient as I can't see it at all times, including right now. But I will check on it. I'll do my best to address questions towards the end of our evening and with our panelists. We will be recording this webinar and we'll send it out shortly after. And it can also be seen on our website anytime after we get it posted there, which usually takes a couple of days. Also, a short survey will appear in your browser after the webinar tonight, and we really appreciate you filling it out as it helps us plan our topics and keeps us accountable to what questions are on your minds. Lastly, you will all receive an email with a link to our website to volunteer at each of the shelters that you will learn more about tonight. So tonight we're going to dive into all things winter weather and emergency shelter for people experiencing homelessness, and most especially the ways in which you can help. My hope is that you'll leave tonight with an understanding of what exactly happens when it comes to extra emergency shelter during the coldest months of the year, the coordination, collaboration, and effort that goes into providing it, and most importantly, how you can help make it happen alongside this incredible panel of dedicated people that you'll be meeting tonight. So emergency shelter is something that pretty much everyone assumes is available for folks, and our community does have shelter space for people year round. And thanks to the Winter Hospitality Overflow Shelter effort that began in 2003, we've even had additional emergency shelter during winter months in Clark County. However, the winter of 2016 and 17 was a catalyzing event that kicked off the efforts of what we'll be talking about tonight, and what has really expanded to become even more emergency shelter during the coldest months of the year. So, how many of you remember the massive snowstorm that hit our area in January of 17? I know it was a while ago, but I definitely remember it. And as I recall, hours were spent stuck on the freeways. Schools were closed for a week or more than a foot of snow fell. And the really unusual thing for that storm was that the snow didn't melt for several days. It just stuck around. The regular shelters and the winter hospitality overflow expanded, but they were all full to capacity. And so the community jumped into action and got as many people as they could indoors for the week, expanding the winter shelter capacity to meet that significant need. Local service partners, faith community partners, and concerned community members all came together in a coordinated effort. And once the community came together in that way, they knew they could turn it into a sustainable effort. And from then on, expanded winter shelter efforts during severe winter weather events was formalized. Okay, so this is my attempt at being cool. How many of you are familiar with the how it started versus how it's going memes? Well, this is how it started. Lots and lots of snow. And so here's how it's going. You can see here that where we stand right now, emergency shelter capacity is about 523 total beds across all seasons. And I'd also just like to say that it's not enough to meet the need. I like to tell people this when I can, because a lot of times I hear people say that people don't want to go into emergency shelter. And while that can be true at times and for a variety of reasons that we'll talk more about, I just want to share that in 2021, just under 1,500 households asked for emergency shelter and around 1,200 households accessed it. So there's always a need, and people do want to get inside, especially when it's cold out. So I also want to give you an idea of where the shelters are in Clark County. Here's a snapshot of where the beds are located throughout the county. And we can see that they're concentrated really within the city of Vancouver and Washougal. And the darker shades of purple on this map indicate a higher percentage of people experiencing homelessness. But homelessness does touch all areas of the county, as you can see, and we're always looking for partners in Northern Clark County. So if you know of any church or space that's interested, please contact me after the webinar. In addition to geographically diverse locations for shelter, there's also a huge need for culturally supportive shelter for members of our Black, Indigenous, people of color, and LGBTQ plus community. All right, so here is our partners for winter shelter and the providers. You can see here that nightly shelter has been expanded between November and March with the help of these incredible partners at the Winter Hospitality Overflow sites, also known as the WHO, of St. Andrews and St. Paul Lutheran churches. The satellite overflow sites of Beautiful Savior, Emmanuel Lutheran, and River City Church provide even more beds between November and March, combining between them to cover 7 nights per week. And then when severe winter weather hits of 32 degrees or below, or snow or ice, Living Hope Church and St. Matthew's Refuel Washougal step up. These sites are able to provide staffing and case management through the amazing services of Outsiders Inn and Share. And I also want to give a huge shout out to our winter weather task force that meets monthly throughout the year to plan and collaborate on this effort. So this is our winter weather task force, and you can see here just how many nonprofit agencies, local jurisdictions, and churches come together to make this happen. Last winter, these partners worked together to provide an additional 55 to 100 emergency shelter beds. So this amounted to providing a warm, safe place to sleep for 514 people, which also included 24 severe cold weather nights during that time. Just look at that tremendous work. So first, I'd like to share a little bit more about the WHO, the Winter Hospitality Overflow, our community's OG original expanded winter shelter. They've just entered their 20th season. Guests access the WHO by calling the housing hotline at Council for the Homeless, and women and families are sheltered at the WHO St. Andrew in Orchards, and single men are sheltered at the WHO St. Paul in downtown Vancouver. Volunteers are needed every night between November 1st and March 31st, and you'll hear more about what volunteering is like from our panelists in just a few minutes. In addition to the WHO shelters, Clark County also has what we affectionately call our satellite overflow shelters, or our SOS shelters. And they are comprised of Beautiful Savior Lutheran Church in Cascade Park, Emmanuel Lutheran in the Heights, and River City Church in the Fourth Plain Corridor. Now, between all 3 of these churches, additional emergency shelter beds are provided 7 nights a week, which is just fantastic. Guests access these shelters through the housing hotline as well, and each site is open the same nights each week, which makes for a predictable experience for both guests and volunteers. So you'll hear from our panelists later on what the volunteer needs and experiences like for each of these locations. So as you can see, there are extra emergency shelter beds in the winter months on a regular basis. But what about when we have snow or freezing rain or just plain below freezing temperatures like we have the last few nights? This is when Council for the Homeless issues a severe weather alert and puts a call out to our partners to open up if they can and coordinate communication across agencies like 211, Clark County Community Services, the City of Vancouver, and CRESA. In this case, two partners, Living Hope Church, located on Andreessen and Fourth Plain, and Refuel Washougal, supported by St. Matthew's Church in Washougal, open up if they have the volunteers and capacity to staff. And remember earlier when I alluded to people not wanting to go into shelter? Well, people oftentimes don't want to separate from their other people, could be their partners or their friends or their family, their pets and possessions in order to go into shelter. So it's important to note that on these coldest of nights, those are accommodated too. Living Hope is open for anyone who needs it, and Refuel Washougal will bring in as many as their space allows, which is usually around 12 beds. Once they announce that they're opening, Council for the Homeless street outreach teams, CRESA, 211, and Clark County put out community-wide alerts through the news media, social media, the housing hotline, and various community partner pages as well. So all this is to say there's a lot going on in Clark County to provide this critical warmth and hospitality and safety to the people who need it. There are so many ways to help and it's all needed. So let's hear from our panel tonight about what it's like to be a winter shelter volunteer and how you can help. So first I'd like to introduce Jane Seidel, a retired grandma who has the privilege of working with the WHO guests and partners from the St. Andrews Winter Hospitality Overflow. At the St. Andrews WHO, volunteers are needed on site or to provide meals or both. So Jane, let's start with you. What does a volunteer do during a typical evening at the shelter?
This season, we are hosting 35 to 40 guests, families with children, couples, and single women. And it's actually been pretty full. We've been pretty full from the very first day, which is pretty unusual. Usually there's a few, usually it's a little bit light the first week or so, but that has not been happening. So what usually happens, our guests check in at 6:30 and they are greeted by the volunteers or one of our WHO task force members who's there as an opener and a greeter. And the share engagement specialists check all of the guests in, returning and new. Every guest that gets checked that comes has been referred by Council for the Homeless, as you've all heard. And so they each get a full and complete review and intake to figure out what their barriers are, what engagement specialists can do. And in the meanwhile, the volunteers, we have 2 volunteers in the evening. We have extra volunteers when it's laundry night. So, but normally it's 2 volunteers and they're there to receive the meals that are donated. We have hot meals donated, 2 hot meals donated each night. And they're there to set it all up, get the cups out and get everything and serve the meal and talk with the guests, and kind of some of them have known them for a long time. And so it's just kind of a community that we have a big community room with a sort of a semi quasi kitchen. It has water and a sink and so forth. So, and the evening volunteers make lunches. Well, they make sandwiches, which we put out on a lunch cart and let people choose what they want for lunch. And then the morning volunteers are also there. They're basically serving breakfast. And they come about 6:30 and they leave about the shift is usually 3 to 4 hours. It's 6 to 10 theoretically, but usually people are finished before 10. Maybe not all the time, but they're usually finished before 10 in the evening, and 6:30 to 9:30. And again, they're usually finished before 9:30 in the morning, but then not always. So that's basically what, yeah, I'm just putting some notes. And then when they have to clean up, they clean up and put the food away and, date it, name it. We have some unnamed, undated items in the freezer as I speak.
Me too.
This is hard. This is hard to remember to do, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, when you're used to putting the things away in your own refrigerator, you think, why do I have to say what this is? Everyone knows it's, no,
Yeah.
in 3 days, we won't know what it is. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much what the duties are. We don't have any heavy cleaning duties because we have in the last 3 to 5 years, we've had janitors, which was not any of you who have ever volunteered at Who before. It was a lot of heavy lifting at St. Andrew, but not anymore. The mats stay out in the gym. Our guests sleep in the gym and they stay out in the gym. Unless occasionally we have to put them aside for a church activity or a scout activity. Did I get everything?
Yeah, I think so. We did get a question come in around the volunteer shifts being available throughout the night, but really you just have the evening and the morning volunteers. So you
Right.
said 6 to
Right.
10 for an evening volunteer PM, and then 6:30 to 9:30 ish AM. Is that right?
And
Okay.
we used to have volunteers throughout the night, but we started having paid staff during the night because it just becomes way too difficult for people to go all night long. So that's been for quite a few years. We've had that. So that makes it easier also for volunteers.
That's great. Let's see if I see any other questions come up here. I think we're good. All right, Jane. Well, oh yeah. Do you want to talk about do you need volunteers to just provide meals or food? Like I always see pictures of crock pots.
Yeah. You saw the picture of the crock pots, yes.
Yeah.
The crying crock pots, we call them. They're looking for their home. But to this year, I used to have two separate signups, one for meals and one for volunteer hours. And then I combined them this year. So each night has slots for 2 volunteers and 2 meals. And it seems to be working quite well. And it was really a wonderful gift during COVID because we had no volunteers. We couldn't have volunteers. And so I thought, well, I'll just see if maybe people want to bring food. Holy moly. There were just so many people who were so happy to be able to contribute in that way because they had not been able to help before because there was so much heavy lifting, and they just couldn't do it. And so we kind of opened up to a whole new group of people that we had not really been connected to before. And so that was that's one of our COVID gifts. We all have some COVID gifts, I know. And that one was a really special one for the Who.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then people sometimes bring things as well. I mean, we don't often get a lot of fresh fruit. So volunteers will often bring fresh fruit to in the morning. So we have it, or juice for kids, just because they see that we have a lot of kids. So they bring juice, or that and then some people like to bring us kind of a surprise. And we end up with breakfast tacos or breakfast burritos or something, which is wonderful. It's just a great treat for our guests. But generally it's just breakfast is just cereal and toast and coffee and hot chocolate, which is pretty good too.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, I have a question in here. Do you need your food handler's card to serve food?
No, we don't need a food handler's card for that. I think we have 1 or 2 on staff on board, but we always use latex gloves or rubber gloves, and we're kind of careful about how we do things, and we're careful about keeping all the surfaces clean and so forth. So
okay,
because since people are cooking the things at home and bringing them, then that's we don't cook anything on site.
Okay, great. And then another question, what times of day is food brought in?
We asked for folks to bring in food from 6 to 6:30. And sometimes that's difficult for people. So when I always offer, call me and we'll figure it out if you have to bring it early. But normally we ask people to bring it between 6 and 6:30 because we know someone will be there. And we have a bell on the front that you can ring the bell and somebody will come.
That's great. All right, so I am gonna post in the chat. I posted a link to our webpage that's got the volunteering links, and then I also
Mhm.
am gonna post. My wonderful colleague from Council for the Homeless is posting questions in the Q&A, and I can copy and paste them into the chat for everybody. She was unable to do it earlier herself, so I just posted links to shifts for November and December at the St. Andrews Who. So I'm going to attempt to keep doing this as we go along. We'll see how many things I can do at once.
For November is the only November openings we have now is a Thanksgiving week. And so that's what you'll see when you open the
Okay,
November
perfect.
one.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Francis. Keep doing what you're doing. It's working. So we hear all about improvising here. So, all right. Thank you so much, Jane. I really
Mhm.
appreciate it. And I am going to move now to Cheryl. So I'd like to introduce you all to Cheryl Pfaff from Beautiful Savior Lutheran Church. Cheryl is a Council for the Homeless board member, supporter, and an invaluable faith community severe weather shelter partner. Cheryl has been involved with Council for the Homeless since 1989 when our agency was first formed. And just is an all-around superstar. So Cheryl, can you please tell us what it's like to volunteer at Beautiful Savior Lutheran Church? You're open Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday nights, so let's start there. And Cheryl, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Laura. I'm going to back up just a minute and say, I think those of us who are part of the SOS shelter have learned a lot from all that went before us at the WHO. And we have built our schedules. We have built so many of our flexible rules based on what we learned with the WHO. And I'm really forever grateful for that. And I remember cleaning showers at St. Andrew in the middle of the night when it was heavier lifting. So
Right.
we're grateful that volunteer work now is something that's really easily done by almost anyone. So the Beautiful Savior Shelter opens on Sunday night at 5 o'clock when the staff person that works with us from Outsiders In, and you'll hear from them later, opens the church and begins to do setup, getting out coffee, hot water, tea, things like that, putting the mats on the floor in the fellowship hall based on the number of guests that we know we're going to be having on Sunday night, so that at 5:30, when our volunteer comes in, they can assist with those things, but also be available to do whatever the staff person might ask them to do and to welcome guests as they come into the shelter. We are all about hospitality, and at 5:45, a volunteer delivers food for everyone, and we ask that our meals be a main dish, a vegetable or salad, and some dessert. And we supplement that at the church with some other items, juice, milk, fruit. We keep things in the freezer in case someone forgets to bring a vegetable, or we keep bagged salad so that if someone forgets to do that. The volunteers are there from 5:30 until 8 or 8:30. They assist in serving the food, visiting with the guests, providing just general hospitality in the kitchen and fellowship hall. And when the meal is over, clean up the kitchen generally, but not totally, because the next morning is going to happen and there'll be breakfast too. And they leave between 8 and 8:30, might stay a little longer if there's more to do, but that's a general evening shift. Overnight, staff members from Outsiders In are in the church all night with the guests, and they actually make our sack lunches for people to take with them in the morning when they leave. A volunteer comes in at 6:30, stays until about 8:30 or 9 to assist with serving breakfast, doing the cleanup of the kitchen, wiping down some of the main surfaces in the building. Once COVID hit, we started doing a little extra cleaning, wiping down surfaces that people might touch. And with flu season hitting us this year the way it may, I think that's a good thing for us to continue. So the volunteer might be asked to do that, sweep up a few crumbs in the fellowship hall. this year, we also, like at St. Andrew, are able to leave our mats until Wednesday morning. In the past, people have had to wipe down their mats and put them away each night, but there is nothing happening in that space during those 2 following mornings, so people can leave their mats where they are. We ask our guests to take their personal items with them, but their bedding and their mats can stay. Yike. Adrian, do you want to jump in and start talking about Emmanuel? Or did I miss anything, Laura?
Yeah, I think that looks good. Let's see if there's any questions that come up. Oh, somebody's asking how many guests that you have
Oh, I'm
usually.
sorry. I was
Yeah,
going to lead with that, and then I had to lead with St. Andrew.
yeah.
We welcome 15 guests each evening and up to 5 pets. And that's something that doesn't happen in all the shelters, but we've had wonderful experiences with pets that have been with us sometimes for an entire season, who've become sort of the mascots of the shelter. And yeah.
That's great. Just as you started talking about pets, my dog started barking. So I hope that
and mine hasn't arrived yet, so I'll be careful about that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. Also, I just remembered that something that I wanted to share about the WHO again, St. Andrew, which is that even though we said, we have November and December up, that gets updated as we go through the year. And so please, like we also have January, February, and March too. So keep an eye out on that St. Andrew's sign up sheet.
And just to add, we are definitely welcome to volunteers who would like to cook meals for those 15 guests and a couple of staff people who might be there in the evening.
Yep.
And you have our sign up, I'm sure.
Yep, I posted the direct link to Beautiful Savior in the chat. Hopefully that went through. So yeah, thank you so much, Cheryl. Really appreciate everything you do there at Beautiful Savior. And I want everyone to know that our severe weather season, or our satellite overflow shelter season, our SOS season, kicked off this week at Beautiful Savior Lutheran. So Cheryl was there first. And and speaking of,
it starts on a Sunday.
Yep. Speaking of that, we have Pastor Adrienne Strelo from Emmanuel Lutheran Church, who her opening night was actually last night, I believe. So Pastor Adrienne is, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday nights at Emmanuel Lutheran. So Pastor Adrienne, would you like to share with the folks what goes on at your shelter and what it looks like there?
Sure. Thank you so much, Laura, for putting this together. Our shelter is in partnership with Beautiful Savior. And so I just so a lot of our volunteer opportunities look a lot the same as Cheryl. So since she talked about that, I'm going to wax a little bit nostalgic here and just say that I remember in 2003, as I was telling the group, writing the first handbook for the winter hospitality overflow shelter out of my home congregation of St. Andrew Lutheran Church, where you are, Jane. And then, again, editing last week the final touches for our handbook that came from your handbook. And so I'm just so thankful for your partnership and your guidance and your prepping these congregations to be ready to say, yes, we can do the next step and bring people into our spaces. And that work that we've done through the WHO set that up, and that was invaluable. And then I also just want to give a shout out to Council for the Homeless, the county, the city, Beautiful Savior Lutheran Church, River City Church, Emmanuel Lutheran, where I serve, and then of course Share, that's staffing the WHO, but definitely our beloved Outsiders Inn, who is staffing the satellite overflow shelter, and then of course those severe weather shelter sites too. This is our 5th season, and I feel like every year it has looked pretty different. When Cheryl said that they no longer are asking people to put their mats down every day. We actually are doing that for the first time in 2 years now. We're
Mm.
asking people to wipe down their mats in the morning and put them aside and their bedding in bins. Again, our shelter looks very similar to Cheryl's because they serve Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We serve Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. In River City, then, God bless them, they take Saturday nights, which is invaluable. And so we open, as she said, at 6 p.m. and then close at 6 a.m. the next morning for people to get on and off site. Our evening meal volunteer comes in at 5:30, and the staff comes in at that time too. And the meal volunteer is the kitchen volunteer, I mean, the one who works in the kitchen, is setting up that kitchen and getting everything ready in the kitchen, ready to serve. And then the staff person is helping that person set up the meal tables and then just getting the bedding and everything ready to distribute, especially that first night on Wednesday. At 5:45, our meal volunteer comes in and brings the meal and helps explain to the meal volunteer or the kitchen volunteer how that's to be served. That can often be the same person if somebody wants to sign up for that. That kitchen volunteer is set to stay from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. And so the rest of it looks very similar to what Cheryl said. We have something that's a little bit different in that we have this beautiful partnership with Food with Friends and Cherish. She was wonderful and helped us procure, actually, we kind of co-owned together with her a shower unit. Which was the only way we could really get showers in there. So we now have a single shower unit right outside of our kitchen. And it's very awesome. And so we can do at least like 6 showers a night. And so our shower volunteer now is coming in at 6 p.m. and staying to 9 p.m. And that shower volunteer is responsible for helping to distribute bedding and get the shower ready to go. And then at 6:30, 15-minute increment showers are given to the guests. And so they just give the guests what they need for the shower. They go in, take their shower, and then they're reminded to leave after 15 minutes to wrap it up.
Yeah.
And then they do one final wipe down before the 9 o'clock hour. So the last shower is at 8:30. And then overnight, as Cheryl said, the staff are there overnight by themselves, staffing that shelter, but they have ready access to our leads from our church, and then also their leads from outsiders in, so that they have a lot of support there. Our morning shift is at 6 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. And so and that's very similar again to Cheryl's. You serve breakfast, same kind of thing. The staff have made a lunch to go overnight. And so the morning volunteer will lay those out. We'll get all the breakfast foods like oatmeal and cereal. And somebody brought in like 1,000 donuts. I'm trying to remember who they were from, but they were lovely people last night. And we have 1,000 donuts at the church. It might have been 50, but it was a lot. I had to take a bin. I had to get a bin to put them in. But they were lovely. And then the one thing that we kind of like to do is on Saturday morning, we've done this from the beginning of our shelter, but on Saturday mornings, we do pancake breakfast, and I make people eat meals like family style, especially now that COVID's a little bit more lenient. We can go back to eating family style. So I have the same rules as with my kids. Like we cook it all together. I put it on the table, and then we eat all together, volunteers and staff and guests. And it is my favorite time, because it's the time when we're all just sitting there and we're all just one together as family, sharing stories, really having time to just connect. And I mean, we're all equals, we're all partners. And so that is my favorite time of our shelter. Did you have other questions for me, Laura?
No, I think you've pretty much covered it. We did get a couple questions come up in the chat, and I'll let anyone who would like address these. One person was asking what COVID precautions are followed. Do volunteers wear masks?
You know, I have been really stringent about masks, so I'll start with that. At our shelter, this is our first year not requiring masks. However, the staff are very clear that if people, volunteer staff, guests, have any kind of symptoms at all, they are to definitely mask up. For example, I'm at the tail end of a cold, as you might be able to hear, and I was very masked up. We do encourage people to mask up if that is more comfortable for you as well. We also have lower numbers. We have like 15 at our shelter. And so there's quite a bit of distance, and we encourage keeping distances between people. And we do a lot of sanitization.
Great. Yeah.
And
Thank you.
our answer to that is basically the same. Masks are optional. And we do ask people if they are in any way not feeling well to wear a mask. If someone feels more comfortable with a mask, that's perfectly fine with us. We also do a lot of sanitizing things, and that has changed a lot since COVID. Before COVID, when we were operating as a volunteer-only shelter, we sometimes had as many as 30 guests. So
Right?
having 15 guests makes it much easier for people to distance. So much is different.
Gosh, I remember that.
We
And then-
definitely said that masks are optional, but and they do a symptom check, and when they check people in every night. And so we do have an isolation room, but if somebody comes in and they're COVID positive, we just, last year for the last few seasons, there was a very reliable and consistent protocol, and that's just not available to us now. So we haven't had anybody yet. So we're hoping it's not going to come to that, but we do extra sanitizing as well. It's just because we've been doing it for so long, it's just normal for us. And I think I don't think we had a single case of COVID the whole time. And we had up to 40 people. And now, because we're part of the severe weather sheltering too, we're going to have up to 50 people. So we're continuing those precautions just because it's smart and it worked before.
Great. Yeah, thank you all. Then we had another question about safety issues. I saw you kind of starting to maybe type up an answer. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so all of the safety from COVID safety, if masks are needed, we want to make sure that they are available for those who need it and who have symptoms. As far as safety issues, all of our spaces, we look to our guest code of conduct. So everybody that comes into our spaces is given an opportunity to understand that our spaces are safe spaces, and they're spaces for rest and relaxation, and that everybody has a responsibility to bring that safety into our space. And so that we look to our staff to guide that and to kind of help that understanding to be as people understand that they walk into our space, that yeah, we're gonna behave, we're gonna be a part of this calm space, and we're gonna get some rest and relaxation. But if staff need to be the guidance to have deeper conversations, we have extra training and support in de-escalation and giving people choices and autonomy in their space, so that way they can be guiding their evening and their emotions into spaces that are better. And so it really goes pretty smooth. Most evenings are kind and quiet, and people enjoy the space as a place that they didn't think that a shelter was going to be that quiet or that normal, and most of our guests are grateful for the space.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Ren. Okay, so actually, thank you, Pastor Adrian. And I love the pancake breakfast, and it's just so great. Yeah. So next, I would like to introduce everybody formally to Ren and Adam. Ren and Adam are from Outsiders Inn and the Who St. Paul, and they also help to staff the satellite overflow sites. They are incredible. They're wearing several different hats here tonight. Also, the Who St. Paul. Sorry if I already said that. I'm trying to do too many things, but anyways, Ren and Adam, let's start with you, and let's start with, since you do wear so many hats, River City Church, which is open on Saturday nights. And do you have a volunteer need at River City Church at this point in time, or is it more contributing to the meal train that you have set up? Tell us what your needs are for volunteering.
And did you say that was me starting?
You, Ren or Adam, either one. Yeah. And also, Adam, I would love to just introduce the fabulous individual over your shoulder there, Sheila Osheroff, who is also from Emmanuel. So Adam and Sheila are actually at the shelter right now. So they're coming to you live from Emmanuel Lutheran. So on the second night of shelter season. So yeah, Adam, I'll
And if
turn it
anybody
over.
Sheila's the reason
found
we
my
got
bad
involved.
camera etiquette, yeah.
Yeah.
And we already are having, people coming back and people wanting to talk and volunteers asking questions. So it's already been a lively night so far while I was hanging out here. And Sheila's behind me. Sheila's been coordinating the outreach for this church for years.
Well,
Yeah.
officially since 2016 and before that, actually,
Yep.
too.
Back when it all started. So, and before that too. But what was your question? Your question was specifically about River City, right?
Yeah.
River City is our newest addition to the SOS. It was the glue that made it all stick together. It's the extra day of the week. They came out of nowhere. They are a small congregation, and we do have some doubts in our minds about will meals be able to be delivered on Saturday nights. So I know there's links and there's volunteer opportunities there. That is our biggest opportunity at this point. The shifts would look the same. The chores and duties would be the same, maybe even a little less in places because it is just a one night a week church. So, there's that kind of thing. Melody is a great coordinator over at the church, so I'm sure there's contact information for her. Please get a hold of her and let her know she'd be glad to talk with folks and help coordinate because she also wants to make sure we get fed and we have enough staff and support.
That's great. Yeah. And then what about at the Who St. Paul?
Well, we are so grateful to be rejuvenating that longstanding volunteer pool of folks. It's been a minute. We miss the volunteers. There are a few guys that have graduated and now either work for us or come back and visit us. And they ask me all the time, when are we going to have some of those regular folks that were in the dining room doing those things, those conversations and the knitting and there was a lot of stuff that happened that you can't really even talk about unless you were there.
I was the one knitting.
One of the knitters right here. So we're super excited to have folks start come back. I know already that we have had some folks starting to volunteer over at St. Paul's, and they're really excited for some of the things that we've done, and we're really excited to have the support. The interesting thing about the SOS and St. Paul's, they're the type of shelters that are only overnight. So unfortunately, we do have to ask people to leave during the day. The hardest part of any staff member's job is to ask folks to leave during the day. So what we can do is we can bring in more support, more hospitality, more time to really work with guests on the things that we know how to work with guests. So if we have that support with meals and with the chores and the other people that need hospitality, then maybe we feel like we can get just a little more work done with folks in the few hours we have before they have to go to bed and survive another day.
Yeah, absolutely. Ren, do you have anything to add? Let's see. So, yep, and outsiders and staffs overnight. That's correct.
Yes, we do. So we actually staff the whole shift. So all 14 hours at both locations are staffed by staff. And for the SOS, it's just one staff member. So it is pretty vital to get that extra support. Um, and I guess I could say something about safety. I heard the safety question earlier, and I appreciate it. When I hire folks, I do, want people to say that, I might be worried, or I don't know what I'm getting into, or what is this environment like. And then we let people visit our spaces, and almost all the time, something happens when people walk in the spaces, and I just realize it's basic humanitarian aid. It's people playing games. It's coffee. It's jokes. It's community, and so the way we address safety is we address it together as a community, and we are all concerned for everyone's safety, and then it turns into something really beautiful where they help police the safety just as much as we do. And there really is no they in us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the questions inside the thing was like, how often do we not have enough volunteers? And well, we're just getting started in the winter season. So I think some of our schedules were looking like there's a strong showing, but there definitely are some open spots because of the fact that we have staff there, that it won't stop the shelter from staying open without the volunteers. We're grateful for every bit of help that we do get, but we're doing our best to keep the doors open and things happening on a staff level. But man, it sure does make it so much nicer and so much smoother, and just feels like there's more the merrier, and that's the kind of shelter spaces that we as a community can put together. And so we welcome all hands on deck.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, well, now I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen, and last but absolutely not least, I'd like to introduce you all to Pastor Brian Norris from Living Hope Church. Living Hope is open when we call severe weather. So when we have those snow or ice events, or even the below freezing temperatures. So Living Hope, kind of steps into gear at the most critical times of the winter, and and in recent years, even throughout the year when we have heat waves or smoke or anything, but specifically during the winter, we are just so grateful to the efforts of Living Hope Church and Pastor Brian Norris. So Brian, let's talk about that and what needs to happen for you guys to open up, and what's it like to volunteer at your site?
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining. Yeah, it's good to see everybody. It's already been said, a huge shout out to Who's and everybody else that helps make all in our community much safer. So huge shout outs and kudos to all of you. The Living Hope model started in, I believe, 2010, and it was just in the, there was a need. There was people sleeping outside what was the old Kmart building, and it was cold, and the previous pastor said we need to open up our doors, provide a place, and we didn't know what that looked like. That was before my time, so I'm kind of going off a history lesson here that I was taught. But the first few years was kind of more learning. It was TV kind of on all night, and just kind of almost I don't want to say a party setting, but more of we're keeping people warm, and we're just going to hang out. And like Adam said, definitely safe and all that, but it was more of just a hangout, not a whole lot of rest. So over the years, we've kind of gotten it more into, again, I want to plug the Who, but that model of people check in. And I'll touch on the safety thing too, that we will be doing the COVID checks, checking for temperatures and all that this year as well, providing safety for not only the fellow resident guests, but volunteers as well. After that check-in, Actually, let me rewind a little bit. So what makes Living Hope a little more unique is we're very low barrier and there are no background checks that are needed to be done. So it's just kind of a first come, first serve basis. What that does is one thing that we have to do is we check for weapons. We have people check in weaponry or larger items that may take up a bed space, and we put those stuff in lockers in the back, and they just pick them up in the morning. We have a security person that kind of takes on that role and stuff, and that way everyone just knows that there's a safety level there. After that check-in, we have a hot meal, dinner, movie, games, coffee, all that good stuff like that was already discussed. We do put on that movie till about 11 o'clock, and then it's kind of a lights out setting, and we roughly see anywhere between 35 and 50. The space that we're in has kind of, when we moved to it in 2020, obviously that was a COVID year, so we were before that able to put like 65 bodies in there and pretty tight. Now we're probably more in that 35 to 40 setting. And we are open until 7 a.m. There is a school that meets here as well, so we ask folks to leave by 7. We have a hot breakfast for them, fruit, something sustenance wise to get them through the day, gloves, beanies, all that good stuff. But yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. The other thing that I'll touch on there is if it is severe weather, if there's ice and snow present, then obviously the school's probably not going to be open, which buys us not only a later checkout time, but even more bodies if there is snow present, and we're going to see more than that, because we really kind of, I don't want to say pride ourselves, but we definitely don't want to leave anybody outside. Like, sorry, we're at 45, that's our max. So we're going to do our very best to get 85. I mean, back in 2016 in that snowstorm, we had a night, we were in another building at that point, but 153 people. And that's just kind of where we're at is, we don't want to see anybody, we don't want to turn anybody away. Again, when that snow is present, there's no school, then we have a Kmart building that can get 153 people in here if need be. So, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So we'd love to get you to join us.
Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah, so evening volunteers, what are the hours for those folks?
So our shifts are 7 to 1, and then also 1 to 7, but there is in between. So I know there's a lot of people that can't do a 5-hour shift. They're working 40-hour weeks, or they're just not able to do that. And I just got to make sure that I have 2 people that do that on both of those shifts, and then I fill in. I like to have 4 people at least in that 7 to 1, and then at least 2 people from that 1 to 7, and then I usually bring 1 or 2 in to help with the breakfast from about 6 to 7.
Okay. So it's 7 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Correct.
So 7 p.m.'s, just getting people inside, welcoming them, getting them settled, and then that, once everyone kind of goes to sleep, and then it's just kind of being there while folks are sleeping, and then gearing up to start the morning tasks, as folks are waking up and getting breakfast, and then yeah, okay. That sounds good. All right. Well, I know we are coming up on our time together tonight, but I did want to ask all of you, this is, the WHO started November 1st, but this is the first week of our SOS sites. And of course, we've already had some severe weather nights already as well this winter. Actually, it's not even winter yet. We just went from summer to winter, I feel like. But what are you all looking forward to the most? Or I know, Pastor Adrian, you shared some great memories. But yeah, what are you looking forward to the most as we get started? Or is there a particular story or memory that you have that you'd like to share with folks as they consider their volunteerism with all of you? And I'll go ahead and let Ren start, and you can popcorn around.
Well, I know earlier we had mentioned about on our first night, we were seeing that there was families this year. And a few years back, there just didn't seem to be as many families. And this year, right off the first day, it was families. And it always breaks my heart, but at the same time, I look forward to being able to play some card games with the kiddos and with those are sometimes the times that you get to have quieter conversations with those who are just, looking for a night of normalcy. And sometimes over a game of tic-tac-toe or go fish is kind of fun. So I'm looking forward to the card games.
Awesome.
And Jane, what about you? I bet you guys got some games going on.
I'm gonna borrow from or kind of tag on to Ren, because and actually it's not my memory, it's sort of a stolen one, but we had a couple, and the gentleman was working really late, and so the volunteer had kind of set some food aside for him, and when he arrived from work, the two of them, husband and wife, sat in our little area, our little food area, our hospitality room, we called it. And they were there just going over their day. And when she walked by and she saw them talking just as they would in their own home, and she thought how lucky she was to be able to witness that, and how much of that experience is part of what everybody goes through when they come in and they have just a moment, a place that they can be private, a place that's quiet, a place where people are friendly and talking to you. And that's really, that's the probably in my mind is the most important thing that the WHO and all of our shelters provide, is that people are seen and they aren't ignored and they aren't passed over, and they're seen, and they feel that keenly, and we do too.
Absolutely.
Following up on that, Jane, the sense of community that you talked about, Ren, that's the thing that is really exciting to me. And I look forward to that this year as the year goes on. In previous years before COVID, sometimes our shelters served the same group of people for almost the entire winter. And we had celebrations when people were able to find an apartment to move into.
Yeah.
We had young people who were in our shelter who got up early to go to high school. Those kinds of things. We had a gentleman who was with us with his wife all season long, who was a well-known musician in his home area and actually played publicly here. So he would bring his instrument in, his guitar in, and play for us at the shelter. And we became really a tightly knit family in that particular year. And I'm looking forward to building those kinds of relationships again.
Yeah.
All right. You know what? I apologize. I don't think I'm going to get to everybody because we're coming up on time, but thank you so much for those of you who did share. And I'm just going to keep moving us along here so that I am respectful of everyone's time. I just want to say again how much we appreciate Living Hope Church in particular, and how you are able to open up, despite the added challenge of weather predictions and trying to predict if there is going to actually be a snow or an ice storm, and finding the volunteers and all of the work that sort of is required to be spontaneous and very much jumping into action, and working fast, and also just want to give a shout out to Refuel Washougal as well. They also do basically the same thing that Living Hope Church does, just out in Washougal. So also want to just give a shout out to my colleague Francis Winston, who's been helpfully posting links in the Q&A so that then I can share them in the chat with all of you. So we'll get that Washougal link posted in the chat as well for you in just a second. For those of you, if we have any East County folks here tonight, they are always looking for meals and volunteers as well. And I just hope that you all leave tonight having a bit more of an idea of what's involved with our winter weather shelter effort and how you can help. And just know that volunteers truly do keep this effort going, and being a part of helping to provide the most basic and essential of human needs during the dark and cold winter months. It's hard work, but it's also very rewarding. You know, it's weird times of day, and but it just really is something that is worthwhile. So again, no experience is necessary. Training's provided. Safety is the utmost priority for everybody. Volunteering's done in an organized, safe, and manageable way. And guests, are screened and filled through the housing hotline for the most part. And because of this, and this is really important because this really speaks to Adam and Ren's work and Cher's work, but people are connected to services and housing programs through this shelter. Cheryl just mentioned, celebrating when people get housed, and that is just such a wonderful thing. So emergency shelter is filling a short-term need, absolutely, but it also is leading to a long-term connection to solutions that best fit each individual, and it's done so in a way where they're able to do it while getting their basic needs met and decompressing a bit and knowing that they have a safe place to sleep at night. So as you leave tonight, I hope you'll sign up for a shift at a shelter or provide a meal or two. You will all receive an email with a link to our webpage after this webinar. And so, yeah, you can also, there's a link to donate money if you would prefer to donate money instead of time. They can buy things like bus passes with those funds, which are really important. Yeah, I just want you to know, I appreciate everyone being here tonight, and just know that, we appreciate your support and your your desire to learn more about this. We hope that you'll share what you've learned with your neighbors and coworkers and friends, and just, our neighbors without homes and shelter deserve our understanding and compassion. And I just want to thank you again for being here tonight to learn more. So, and as always, I'll leave you with what I always do, which is to continue to be kind when you meet people without homes or shelter. It really makes a huge difference and goes such a long way. So thank you again, everybody, for being here, and we will see you
Thank you, Laura.
next time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.